Greetings, parents. Mrs. Katie Cook and myself, Jamie McCullough, would like to thank you for your time in viewing our workshop. This workshop is geared towards fluency and comprehension and strategies that you can use at home to help your children strengthen these skills to help them become more skilled readers.
To get started today, we're going to start with an icebreaker. This is something I like to do with my students. You'll get 2 M&Ms, and each color represents something you need to share about yourself. If you get red, then you have to share something about your day yesterday. Blue, your favorite school subject from when you were a child. Yellow, something you like to do for fun. Green, something you cannot live without. Brown, something you can do well. And orange, something you and your child like to do together. This just gives us a little information about you and warms us up a little bit.
As a parent, you might ask yourself, what is fluency? According to Rosinski, he states that reading fluency is composed of 2 parts, prosody and automaticity. Prosody is whenever a student can read a text expressively. This means they're able to read with expression. This helps them be more fluent in reading and also make more of a connection with what they're reading as well. For example, let's look at the sentences below. If a student is reading expressively, they would pay attention to several things. 1, their tone would change with the punctuation. The pacing of their reading would speed up and slow down as needed. Phrases would make sense. Their volume of their voice would become soft or loud, and the pitch will rise and fall as well. So, if I were to read these 2 sentences with correct prosody, it would sound like this. Look out for that car! Do you know what a dream catcher is? Also, students need to read with automaticity. When a student reads with automaticity, they are able to accurately identify words effortlessly, meaning they are able to identify a word based on sight. They should not have to sit there to struggle to decode the letters of the word. Now that you may have a better idea of what fluency is, you may be asking yourself, what can you do to help your child build their fluency? Let me begin by saying it is vitally important that a child's education continues at home. We must work together to make sure that your child has adequate practice in their reading to strengthen all of the skills necessary to become skilled readers. In the upcoming slides, I'm going to give you some strategies that you can use to help strengthen your child's fluency. Now, when you start looking into strategies to implement to try to help your child's fluency improve, there are some things you need to do before. You're going to make sure that these building blocks are in place. There are several outside factors that are building up to being a fluent reader. One of these is that a child needs to have good decoding strategies. These are the phonics skills that they have been working on from pre-K up until 2nd grade last year. These are the blends, how BL says bull, and the sneaky E makes my vowels long, and you've got digraphs. All of these are skills that they have been practicing for the last 3 years. Another thing that helps readers read more fluency is if they have a strong vocabulary. Now you may be wondering, what does vocabulary have to do with fluency? Think about it though. If you are reading a word, a sentence, and you come to a word you don't know what it means, if you are able to use a context clue to determine the meaning of that word, it may help you decode it more quickly. There are several things you can do to build vocabulary, and the most basic thing is to just talk to your children. Ask them questions and let them answer them to you in detail. The last thing that is one of the building blocks is that students are able to quickly identify sight words. I'm sure you've been seeing sight word lists for years now. Sight words are words that are constantly reappearing in a text, and they don't generally follow the phonics rules, so you kind of just have to learn them. If your child has these three things, then they have a pretty good foundation to start working on being a fluent reader. One thing you can do as a parent to help your child build those fluency skills is to show them how it's done. Model how to read fluently. Reading to elementary students has often been considered beneficial to help build fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. In building fluency, if you're reading, your child's going to hear how you read with expression, how you get excited with exclamation points, how you change your voice inflection. They're going to notice that you read with different voices for different characters, and certain text features such as italics and bold print are going to cause you to read words differently. Also, if you discuss the vocabulary words that may be unknown to them and the use of the text, it's going to help them build their vocabulary knowledge, which is going to help them with their fluency and with their comprehension. In order to strengthen comprehension skills, you can question your child before, during, and after. Make predictions, ask them what they think is going to happen next, who, what, when, where, how, why type questions. All of these things are beneficial whenever you read out loud to your child. As a parent, you can also provide assisted reading opportunities. Assisted reading is when a child reads with a person who is more fluent than they are. This could be anyone in your family or community. Big brothers, your neighbors, members of the church, or go to a local library. When you're doing this, there's two ways you could do it. You could core read or echo read. If you echo read, the more fluent reader is going to read a section of the text, and then the learning student is going to read and imitate the way they read it. If you're reading chorally, you're going to read it all together. Both of these strategies help a child see how to read with expression to improve their fluency. In the upcoming slides, I've got a wonderful YouTube clip of a teacher who is teaching some strategies to help build fluency. While you are doing these things, it is important to stop and talk about the text as you read. If a child reads a sentence and doesn't have the correct voice inflection, you might want to point out the punctuation marks. Also, you might want to point out things such as quotation marks and let a child know that that's when someone is actually saying something. If there's no one around to help your child read with an assisted reader, don't worry. There are so many tools available through technology that's going to help provide your child with this tool. One such tool is the Audacity site, and I have the website on the screen. This is a free resource where you can go online and record sound segments. So you could go online, read a story, and it's going to be available for your child to log on and read later. Also, YouTube has countless numbers of books that you can type in to listen to be read. You have books on tape. Another thing you could do that may be different for a child is to turn on the closed captions to the television. So that way they have to read the text as their favorite cartoon is playing. All these strategies are just helping your child to become more involved with what they're reading and giving them a great example as to what a fluent reader is. Now, we've talked about several strategies that you can use to help your child become a more fluent reader. But if you're like me, sometimes I like to see these things in order for me to truly understand how to do them. If you would like, you can take the time to view this link. This is a YouTube video of a teacher in a small group type reading instruction where she is incorporating several of the strategies we've talked about. For instance, Before she reads, she's asking the children to make predictions about the text, so it kind of gears their minds towards what they're fixing to be reading about. During the reading, she makes sure that she reads with correct expression. She makes time to point out things such as quotation marks and bold print. And then she also shows them how to read with correct prosody. Once again, if you were like me and if you are better at seeing some strategies being implemented, just take a time to view this quick 4.5-minute video. It's very beneficial. As parents, one of the most effective things you can do is to encourage your child to read, and read again. Let your child read a text over and over. Practice does make perfect. In the past, oftentimes, students would get a book, read it once, talk about it with you, with their peers, and never really return to that book to read it again. But think about this. If a child is not a fluent reader, is that child truly getting the best that they can out of that text? In order to help children become more proficient readers, they are encouraged to read a text repeatedly, multiple times, so that way they can establish a better understanding of the text. If they do not master the text, they're not going to be able to become proficient and confident readers. This type of thing is what teachers call deep reading. When a child reads the text several times with high-quality feedback, they improve their performance of fluency as well as comprehension. These strategies can help the children not only be able to read the text they're currently reading, but more challenging texts in the future as well. Now, I just said that it was important to make sure that you give feedback. One of the things that you can do as a parent is to listen to your child read. Make them read everything to you. Library books, menus, brochures, directions, words from the television, everything. One thing that we don't need to do, though, is to stop a child every time they make a mistake while reading in a sentence. If we do this, it's going to make it hard for the child to learn self-correcting strategies, which are very important in being proficient readers. For example, if you're looking at the sentence that says, "I saw a cat," and the student says, "I would," and you immediately cut them off and say, "Nope, look at that again," they're not going to be able to try to develop those skills of self-correcting. So let them read it through to the end of the sentence. If they don't recognize their mistake at the end of the sentence, that is a good time to go back and to help correct the child on what type of fluency mistake they made. The key here is to make sure that your child is able to read. Make sure they have books, anything with print on it. The more they read, the better. Now, we just talked about the importance of having your child read things repeatedly. One thing that we need to make sure, though, is that your child is reading a text that is something they can do independently. It needs to be one on their independent reading level. This is something that they're likely to call a just right book. If you are taking your child to the bookstore, or if they're bringing books home from the library, you want to double check and make sure that it's a book that they can read. In doing this, you want to make sure it's a book that's interesting to the child. If they are not interested, they're not going to give it as much effort and attention as if it was a text that was intriguing to them. Next, have your child do the 5-finger test. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes. The child needs to be able to read most of the book easily and to be able to establish an understanding of what is happening. So, when they're reading this to you, you should be able to pick out that they are able to read the books pretty easily. They may stumble on some words the first time they read it, but if they've read it a second time and they're still stumbling and they can't answer the questions before, during, or after, or if they don't self-correct some fluency problems, It may be a text that is too difficult, and you may want to get one that is a lower reading level. This is not a bad thing. If you have to go to a book at a lower reading level, it is going to be more effective in building fluency than if they have a book that is too hard for them to decode and read independently. This is another informative poster that's going to show you how to find a just right book. Notice it says if the book is too hard, there are more than 5 words that are tricky, and they have to reread a lot to understand what they're reading. If it's too easy, there are no tricky words, and you have to read without thinking about it. You don't want a child to read a story without having to think about what they're reading. In order for it to be just right, there are going to be some tricky words, because you do want them to be challenged in establishing their fluency. And you want to make sure that it's something that they're going to have to think about while reading. These things are things that you can look at and observe before, during, and reading, after they're reading. And as long as you can see that they are able to decode it, read it without much frustration, then they are more than likely at a just right level book. Now, a few minutes ago, I said that in order for a text to be a just right book, it needs to pass a 5-finger rule. Well, what in the world is a 5-finger rule? 5-finger rule, what you're going to do is you're going to have your child hold out their hand and pick any page in the text. Every word that they come across that they don't know, they have to hold a finger up for. If there's 0 to 1 words that they don't know, the book's too easy and not going to be challenging enough for them. If there are 1 to 2, it's perfect. 3 to 4 is kind of on the edge. The child can give it a try and see how they go. Now, as you notice that during the reading they're having to really struggle to decode the words, you need to realize that that text is too difficult and go down a level. If it's 5 or more words that the child cannot decode, that means it is too hard. Now remember, choosing the just right book is very important, because if it's too easy, a child's not going to have to think about what they're reading. But if it's too hard, they're going to spend so much time trying to decode and read fluently that it is going to begin to affect their comprehension. Now that we have reviewed strategies to help your child become a more fluent reader, and seen a teacher in action implementing some of these strategies, you might be wondering, why is fluency so important? According to some theories, if a child has become fluent in their reading, they have to use a significant amount of their cognitive energy to decode the words they read. Therefore, cognitive energy needed for comprehension has been used for low-level decoding tasks. Now let's take this theory and apply it to something that may be something you would experience. Have you ever had a really long day at work? Everything's gone wrong. And then you go to the grocery store and you forget half of what you needed. I know I've done it. Now, let's apply that situation to this theory. We have used all of our cognitive energy at work. So therefore, at the end of the day, our minds are literally tired and cannot complete other tasks. Now this is very similar to a child who struggles with reading fluency. If they are having to use all of their cognitive energy to decode words, make sure they read with correct prosody, try to figure out the meanings to vocabulary in the context of the text, it is going to make them tired and unable to comprehend to the best of their ability. Fluency has been known to be what bridges the gap between decoding and comprehension. And comprehension is such a vitally important skill in so many areas, and Mrs. Cook is going to go into greater detail about those areas and strategies we can use, as well as you, to help improve your child's skills in that area as well. Now, you may be wondering what types of resources are available for parents to use to help their children's fluency be strengthened. One resource that I really like is the FCRR, the Florida Center for Reading Research. If you click on this link, it's going to take you to a page where you can select several of different areas of reading. phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension as well. And it's divided in groups of grade levels. So this is a great way for you to differentiate the instruction for your child. If your child is reading very fluently, you can find resources to help strengthen it even further and choose a higher grade level. If you believe your child is struggling with their reading fluency, you can just choose a lower grade level to work with. If they're having a hard time with fluency because of their phonemic awareness, there are all types of hands-on activities and centers that we could use that you can print off to practice at home. Games, everything. Kids love games, so this is a great resource. Another website I've attached is poetryforkids.com. Remember we said that repeated readings are very beneficial to helping build fluency. This website has several poems that are available for children that are just fun to read. Previously, I mentioned Audacity as a free resource to be able to record sound to help with the choral reading. If you're looking for some passages that are not in just a library book, this link up underneath here has grade level passages with comprehension. So if you would just like to find a brief, quick passage for your child to read, it's got that, and then you can let them answer the comprehension questions so you can see if the fluency is causing a problem with the comprehension as well. If they're reading fluently and they're still having a hard time comprehending, then that's another area you need to be looking into. Another good thing about the site is, once again, it is divided by grade levels. So you can look at where your child is performing in class and choose one to help them. I know that a lot of students benefit from checklists. If you look at the last link on this page, it has a checklist for fluent readers. It's very colorful, it's pleasing to the eyes, and it's just a great tool for the children to look at to make sure that they are reading with expression. Fluency is not reading fast. It's reading with prosody and automaticity. And it has all the components there on that checklist to make sure that your child is able to read fluently. A lot of times as children are moving into upper elementary from 3rd grade and above, they are moving from learning how to read to reading to learn. And so hopefully these tools and these strategies will help your child be able to do that.
Jamie did a great job of explaining what reading fluency is and giving you different strategies and resources to use to help you at home. I'm going to talk a little bit about reading comprehension. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is comprehension? Simply put, comprehension is the ability to understand a text and make sense of what you have read. It is comprised of two main elements, one of those being vocabulary knowledge. In order to comprehend a text, students must be able to make sense of the individual words. I'm going to give you strategies to help a little bit later. The second part is text comprehension. When students have a firm grasp of those vocabulary words individually, they are able to apply their meaning within the text that's being read. This way, they make a better understanding of what's actually being read. A great way to get started with helping your child at home with reading comprehension is using pre-reading strategies. These are things that you can do before you and your child actually sit down to start reading a book or a text. Some of those include finding interest. You need to find what your child is interested in, whether you talk to them about things going on at school, different activities that they like to do. You need to build their interest. This will help you find books that will keep them motivated to read. Another strategy is building that vocabulary knowledge like I talked about earlier. Some ways that you can do this is go through the book ahead of time and pick out some words that your child might not be familiar with. Sit down with them, talk through it. That way when they come across it in the text, they'll be familiar with it. Another great strategy is using picture walks and making a prediction. Have the student or your child go through and look at the pictures without reading the story. See if they can make a prediction about what they think the story is going to be about before they even read it. This also helps to tap into prior knowledge, which is another strategy. See if the pictures or anything reminds them of something going on in their own lives or reminds them of something that happened to them. Tapping into that prior knowledge really helps them to make a connection with what they are reading. And another strategy is just reviewing the story elements, setting, where the story took place and when, the characters, the plot, what's the problem in the story, and what's the solution that happens. That way, as they're reading, they can look for those things and try to identify them as they go. While you're working on reading comprehension with your child, take time out to actually read with them. This can be one of the easiest things to do and yet one of the most beneficial. Partner read with them. Let them read a paragraph or a page and then you read a paragraph or a page. This lets them know that you're interested in what they're doing and it gets them excited about it. You want to make sure that you find a book that's just right for your child. Jamie mentioned the 5-finger rule earlier, and this is a great strategy to use. You don't want to find a book that's too difficult or too easy for them. Another useful tool is this Reading A to Z website that I've attached here. There's a level chart that lets you see their grade level. It's broken down into their Fonts and Pinnell, the Lexile, whichever your school uses. There's different ways you can find a book that's on your child's level. While you're reading with your child, some strategies to use include questioning. Once they've read a paragraph or a page, stop and ask them questions about it. Or if you're the one reading, have them ask you questions. The questions that they come up with can really let you know whether they're paying attention, whether they're understanding the text being read. You want to use open-ended questions, not yes and no. You want them to be able to elaborate and explain their answers. Visualizing it is another great strategy. Have them tell you what they see as you're reading, or draw a picture of what they just read. Making predictions is another one. Have them predict what's going to happen based on what they already know, what they've heard or read. Discuss what's happening and make connections. See if they can relate to a specific topic or passage that they've read. After you finish reading the section for the day or the night, ask them those open-ended questions that have to do with the overall topic that was read. See if they can give you the main idea of what took place. Have them identify those 5 story elements that we reviewed before reading: the setting, when and where it took place, the main characters, the plot or what happened, the problem that occurred, and then the solution that happened. A reading response journal is a great way for them to keep track of what they have read each night. They can write about a particular part they liked or a question that they have, and they can draw a picture to go with it. This way you can check their understanding. I've attached a link to a YouTube video of a parent who's also a teacher demonstrating how to help your child read at home. Here are some examples of those open-ended questions I was talking about to ask your child once you have finished reading. How did the story make you feel? What did you like or dislike about the story? What did it remind you of? Making those connections again. What were you wondering as you read? Things like that. So they're not just yes and no questions. Your child actually has to think about it and elaborate on their answer. Here's an example of how you can build a reader at home. There are different things: exploring books, making sure you're reading, asking questions, picking the right fit. There are things for beginning readers and advanced readers as well. So this is a great resource for you. There are a number of resources available to you out there to help your child with reading comprehension at home. A few of the particular ones that I enjoy are Reading Rockets. This is a great website to help with struggling reading. There are resources available and different examples and tips that you can check out. I also created a Pinterest board with tips for parents, and I've attached the link below. Reading A to Z is a great site that you do have to sign up for a free trial, but there are guided reading books that come with questions that are on your child's level that are great practice. Jamie and I would like to thank you for attending our education workshop. We hope that you took away valuable strategies that help you with your child's reading fluency and comprehension. This is a team effort and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. Reading is the key to success. Thank you.